I was wondering, yeah, I think this issue that you're bringing up about Ro Khanna being quietly mentioned, or I guess not so quietly now that's in the news, as Bernie Sanders' successor from some insiders in the party, yeah, I think it shows that there's a very meager effort for like a legitimate person to go beyond Bernie Sanders in a more progressive, more left-wing direction if Ro Khanna is the best. I don't know if you saw this as well, but on the 8th of March 2022, Hillary Clinton was endorsing Ro Khanna's book. And, you know, just because someone endorses you who has terrible political position doesn't necessarily mean the content of what you have is bad. But definitely it's a very bad sign when Hillary Clinton feels so comfortable with it. And I think it really goes to your point that since the Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton find Ro Khanna so palatable, it means that in their political calculations, they view him not to be the same type of threat that, for instance, Hillary Clinton definitely found Bernie Sanders to be. Granted, Bernie Sanders still definitely does capitulate to Joe Biden, as we saw with his interview with Crystal Ball when he was not ready to critique Biden seriously, even though that was quite the platform to do so, in a good faith discussion with one of his pretty big supporters in the media. And I think it really does show that there's not a serious effort from even Ro Khanna and so on, who are supposedly among the most progressive members of the United States Congress, to critically re-examine the failures of the Bernie Sanders campaign towards the end of 2020 and actively, like, with the failures of the Progressive Caucus. Because there's definitely introspection to be done, and there's definitely improvements to be made if they were serious about it, if that's something they wanted. But it doesn't seem to be the case. I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, so my thought about this is it seems very strange to me because right now Ro Khanna is to the right of Bernie Sanders. So I don't really I don't really understand out of all of the people, why would they ask him? It just seems, again, I think this points to the fact that the Democratic Party is moving further and further to the right. And this is a problem. And so when I see people on Fox News say that the Democrats are losing in these states because they're moving further and further to the left, they can never point to one single policy that Democrats have implemented that says we're moving further and further to the left. I haven't seen one policy. I haven't seen them do anything for student loan debt. There's no Medicare for all. I've seen Joe Biden give the military more money. I've seen him give corporations more money, and he continued some of the things that Donald Trump did. So it's just obvious to me. I feel like the Democratic Party has decided that they're going to move further and further to the right. And anybody who comes into that party as a progressive, as a leftist, they are going to have a difficult time. They are going to struggle, and they're not going to let those people, get what they want. And even though I don't feel like progressives in Congress are really fighting for us right now anyway, anybody who really does come in there and really does try to fight, they're not going to let them do it. They're either going to try to push them out, or they're going to tell them, look, this is the way the party works. You either go with the party, or they're going to shun them. I've heard some stories come out of DC. They're either going to shun them, or they will pick someone to run against them. They will primary challenge someone in their own party just to get them out. And I think AOC knows that, so she knows how to play the game. I think the only person that may be struggling with that right now is Cori Bush, because she seems to be the only one still standing by defund the police. So it's just really strange to me that out of all the people, they would pick Ro Khanna, who has been heavily ridiculed last year for not holding the line. He's been ridiculed recently in that interview with Max Blumenthal, when Max Blumenthal pointed out that he was supposed to be anti-war. And then he listed all these different examples of, well, I'm anti-war except for this, 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 and this. So it's just incredibly disappointing. I don't understand why they would go for Ro Khanna out of all people. He's not well liked. That's just my opinion.
I think what you said about Ro Khanna being to the right of Bernie, I think one of the clearest examples of that is there's a tweet from May 16, 2019 by Ro Khanna, which he says, quote, "I am for progressive capitalism, fair, free enterprise that rewards work and innovation, not some of the privileged or connected few," end quote. I don't understand, with that type of statement, I don't know how Ro Khanna climbed to the top of Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2020. That he should have been on Elizabeth Warren's campaign. That's what she said, if I'm not mistaken, on the debate stage with Bernie. Bernie was the one who said, like, I'm not comfortable calling myself. She said, I consider myself a capitalist, if I'm not mistaken. Bernie Sanders never said that he always, when he gets pressure, he'll say he's a democratic socialist. So I don't understand how Ro Khanna was able to use political chicanery to be able to get his way so up top. Because, yeah, you're right. He definitely is on many issues to the right of Bernie Sanders. And so it's kind of strange for me that that's the case. And I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and another thing I think we need to keep in mind too is that remember when Bernie Sanders was running in 2020, he said, "Yes, I am a democratic socialist." And he denounced capitalism actually when he was running in 2020, and Elizabeth Warren was the one that reminded us, "Hey, I am a capitalist." And she said that if that was something to brag about for some reason. But she said that and Bernie Sanders didn't. So I do want to remind everyone, Ro Khanna is still a capitalist, and you should look up all of his donors on Open Secrets. He takes money from Big Pharma. So how is he going to say he's for Medicare for all, which he tweets about often, but he's taking money from Big Pharma? So that to me just tells me like this is just a grift kind of thing for him. I don't think he's really serious about it. Plus his wife takes money from those industries as well. So this is very concerning. I don't think this is somebody that they should be trying to push. I think this is a slap in the face to people who are progressives, to people who are leftists. How do you go from Bernie Sanders to Ro Khanna?
It's just so interesting to me because, like, obviously, if he wanted someone that was in his camp who was more left wing than him, more progressive than him, he would go for Nina Turner or Cornel West. But I don't think he's interested in pursuing something politically. But what's interesting about Ro Khanna is, despite his pretty poor positions and his ability to be, pretty milquetoast sometimes when the pressure comes. He's so willing, impressively, to go on and get grilled on different left-wing media, whatever ecosystem exists right now, whether that's Jimmy Dore's or others. And that's kind of interesting to me because many of them, like AOC, when she was offered a debate opportunity with Marjorie Taylor Greene or Ben Shapiro, she just refuses right away. I don't know why. She could definitely use that to show how poor the other people's positions are, even if AOC has some weaknesses. But she could definitely use that to expose Ben Shapiro, to expose Marjorie Taylor Greene, to get more people in the political process, draw them in the political process, and have substantive points to make. But she doesn't want to do it. But Ro Khanna looks like he's always looking for these left-wing opportunities. So that's another curious thing for me.
Well said. Okay, thanks so much for your call, Kusha. I'm actually going to go ahead to the next caller. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to take the next caller, which is Mitchell. Okay, Mitchell, you'll just need to unmute.
No.
Hello?
Hello? Did it work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was a precinct chair in 2016, and I was supposed to be one in 2020 in Iowa. So I was very involved with the caucuses. I was one of the more involved people in my county, went to other counties to help, and I was involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign. And I saw it completely differently. And we had a really wonderful person who really kicked the ball off and really made everything possible for Bernie. And her name was Misty Rebick. And both times when it became likely that Bernie was really kicking everybody else to the curb, Misty was replaced by somebody from the Democratic Party, or control was turned over to either, I forgot his name, Weaver or something. And then the second time, instead of Weaver, I felt like, I don't know if you remember how it was going in 2019. Bernie was really on the roll. And then all of a sudden they decided that, okay, we need to put Ro Khanna and Nina Turner in as co-chairs and no longer had Misty running the ball. And you could see a slowdown in it. And I attended a lot of events with Ro Khanna, spoke with him on multiple times. Every time I got the idea that it felt like he was trying to slow down the operation, not speed it up. And
Interesting.
with oh, sorry, are you
Oh no,
able to hear
go
me?
ahead.
Okay.
I was just saying interesting. Go ahead.
So I considered him more of a campaign boneacre, just like this guy named Weaver. If he gets put on a campaign, basically a sign there, who knows what kind of deals are done in the back rooms, saying if you want to be a candidate, you got to take this guy as your campaign controller in order to get Democratic Party funds. Not that Bernie got many funds, and often things worked against. But you really have to go back to Iowa itself. Um, we had to go through training on how to be a precinct chair, and the precinct chair actually decides who wins. They can override anything at the end. The power of the precinct chair is left vague, especially for one rule. If there's a tie, if you'll remember, Hillary Clinton won Iowa because she won all 6 ties in 2016. The rule for a tie is if it's a tie, it has to be a coin toss. And that's how it goes in the public. And they're very careful to say, in order to prevent us from getting a lawsuit, you must toss a coin. The next thing in the training is, but we purposely do not define what a win is for a coin toss. And we have a statement in there that the win is totally up to the decision of the precinct chair. And then they pull aside what they don't say on the news articles or whatever. They go, we expect you to throw all ties to the party candidate. And so 2 of us complained and were immediately removed as precinct chairs.
What?
So then I was demoted to precinct secretary. And then as precinct secretary, my only goal was to ensure that the caucus counts were done correctly. So in it, we had a lot of candidates. So we had a theater in a high school divided up, and we had to go around the different parts of the school. So we'd say these rows are for the Warren voters, these are for the Buttigieg voters, these are for. He said try to get into groups so we can get an initial count, and we're supposed to do multiple counts. So in the first count, you had to have a certain number of votes. I believe it was 15 or so to go on to the second count. And a bunch of Warren voters got up and came over to the Bernie group because they were upset that they were told that if they did not get enough numbers, so at that point in time, you have the option to go out to anybody who has not picked a party to try to talk them into joining yours to get the extra numbers. So there's a second vote right after that. But on the first one, there was a deal between the Buttigieg people and the Warren people. Whoever had the least numbers in the precinct would go to the other one to prevent Bernie from having enough people. And some of the Warren people thought that just was not democratic, and they came over to the Bernie group. So I became the Bernie delegate. And then so we have a caucus, then a primary. So the primary is done by the delegates. And so when we had the county primary, I was called up and told to drop being a Bernie Democrat, become either Biden or Buttigieg, or leave the Democratic Party. And so now I'm trying to find a party. But back into the more of it, the term would be throwing a bone. And I believe what's happening is this opportunity to run for president is payment to Ro Khanna for his efforts to help hold back the Bernie campaign.
Wow, this is news to me.
Nina Turner. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. Have you told anyone else about this?
I've told a bunch of different Bernie people. I really don't want to have my house firebombed. But
Oh my
a
God.
large number of Bernie delegates got the same phone call. And the ones that didn't get the call were offered jobs by a certain New York media person to help the Biden campaign, even though the other guy was campaigning for his own presidency somewhere else. So, the whole thing just left me very, very upset with the Democratic Party. And but Nina Turner, a lot of people in other states do not realize that there are a lot of white people, or not, there are a lot of black people in Iowa, but they're mostly in the cities. So most of our precinct by precinct, are majority white. I'm not saying 100%, but majority. And what happened was Nina Turner, we really only got to see her at events where they wanted, we wanted it to look, or not, it appeared to be more like they wanted it to look more like there was more participation and support for black members of the Democratic Party than there really was. So like
Wow.
Waterloo, Iowa is almost like 30 or 40% black, which is higher than the national average. And so every opportunity, if they did something, Nina would be there. But if it was to any other area, they'd send Ro. And and again, it's just like with some operations, if you don't want scrutiny, you can order some type of military equipment by buying a whole bunch of cereal for a 20-year contract to sell cereal instead of paying for whatever you need to not have on the books. And I just look at it the same thing. This was just throwing a bone. And
Elvin Brown
Kamala Harris the same thing.
So listen to this, Mitchell. Elvin Brown just said that's why Simone Sanders sold out the Progressive Party for a job with Biden.
Yeah, I believe that too. I believe that they just peppered Bernie Sanders with all kinds of vote anchors and poison pills.
Wow. This is crazy. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much for that. I want to go ahead and get to the next caller, but that was really interesting to hear. That does explain a lot. But thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead to Eric.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Eric, you are now the next caller.
Hey, so when I gotta say, when I first heard this whole thing about Ro Khanna running for president, I thought it was a joke. I literally thought somebody was just joking. I'm like, no. And then I go check, and I'm like, this is really real. And I get the Democrats don't care. They obviously don't want to win, but damn, Ro's trash. He's just terrible. And just hearing what Mitchell said, like about the shadiness and all the bullshit with the Democratic Party. This is why we need another party. This is why we need stuff like the third party summit going. And damn, I don't even know what else to really say. I mean,
well, let me just say this really quick, Eric, because this goes back to a point that, Fiorella Isabel is very vocal about this. She's come on my show and she's talked about this. She's talked about it on Convo Couch. We don't have a fair process in this country. All of you on this call just heard what Mitchell just said. It's not fair. It's not a fair process. So if you don't have a fair process, how do you know that the people that you are voting for, how do you know it's actually even being counted correctly? How do you know?
You don't. You just don't. I mean, that's really why, like, running in these two parties is pointless. It's there needs to be some other, like, some real groundswell, some real mutual aid, some, like, outside of this two party system. Actual mutual aid, actual structures outside of the system that can actually fight against the system at least.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's kind of why, like, I guess local elections would be the only plausible elections.
Right.
But then local can only go so far, and it's just damn.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because I do want people to focus more on what they can do locally instead of focusing so much on the federal level. And what I mean by that is not tomorrow, but next Saturday, I'm actually having a ballot initiatives panel on this show. It's going to be me and a couple other people that all live in states that have ballot initiatives. And we're going to talk to you about how you can get things done on the local level. So, things that we've accomplished here in Massachusetts include legalizing marijuana, legalizing gay marriage. There's other things too that I don't remember right off the top of my head, but one of them had to deal with the automobile industry, right to repair. That's actually an important law. My husband can explain that better than me. It has to deal with automobiles. But I think that is one of the ways that we can get things done on the state level. And then, of course, the question is, well, what happens if you live in a state that doesn't have ballot initiatives? Totally get that. But the idea is that the states that do have ballot initiatives, once they pass those legislation, once they pass on the ballot, that actually will put pressure on the states that surround the ballot initiative states. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it works here in New England. Usually, if Massachusetts passed something, our surrounding states, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, they're usually right behind us. So, right now, there is a New York Health Act in the state of New York that they're trying to get passed. According to what Roger Meadows told me, apparently with that health act, if you live in New Jersey but you still work in New York, you would still be under, you have the opportunity to be under the New York Health Act. If that passes, that is going to be huge. So this is the idea, you guys. We need to look more on the local level and see. If you notice, the mainstream media distracts us from that. They don't really want us to focus on local politics as much. Why do you think every time you turn on the TV, you hear more about Joe Biden, Kamala Harris? When Trump was in office, it was Trump, Trump, Trump. They talk a lot about the presidential campaigns. They'll talk about who's running for Congress, who's running for Senate, but they don't focus as much on these local elections. You know, most of the people I talk to here in Massachusetts don't know who their city councilors are. That's actually not uncommon. People don't know. They don't want you
It's
to know.
yeah,
Go
that's
ahead.
really. I mean, I shouldn't say that's embarrassing. Like, it's true. It's true where I'm at in Florida too. Um, I had to show my students who their city council people were, and now I'm not expecting them to know, but I'm like, well, at least you learned something else that you didn't learn in your history class. Uh, but yeah, it, I guess I guess in my area specifically, I do worry about engagement, um, and I don't know. It's just it's engagement is an issue too. It's just like a lot of the like younger voters that can vote don't want to, and I understand where they're coming from. Um, it's just that like at least locally, it's just we have a lot of older people in city council, and so that's just constantly what's shown. Like it, I don't know, it just feels like you have a bunch of just old heads in city council or in the mayor's office, and nothing's really being built politically for the community itself. I don't know if you kind of get if you kind of catch my point or not.
hmm No, I totally get where you're coming from. I think that we need to encourage more people if they do want to run for a position. I think we need to encourage them more to run for positions like city council because city council controls the budget. Those positions are important. I know they're not popular positions to run for because if you work for city council, you still have to have a regular job. Most people, anyway.
Yeah,
So it tends to be a less. It's a thankless position, I would say. But at the same time, like if you do want to start out and get involved in politics in some way, shape, or form, I think that's where you should start. Start in city council. In fact, Ayanna Presley, who is part of the squad, actually was city councilor here in Boston. And a lot of people don't know that because you don't hear much about her. But that's where you can do more like on the local level. So I think that's a good way to go if you want to do that. But definitely letting you know that in reference to electoral politics, I really believe that the best way for you to really get things done is through the local level. And when it comes to the federal level, Lee Camp talked about this as well. They only really pass things that support corporate interest. That's why a lot of the issues that we're fighting for, that's why they're not even bringing them to the table. And when they do bring them to the table, they don't pass. There were 8 Democrats that voted against $15 minimum wage. So that tells you that says something there.
Yeah, and speaking locally, especially like in some of these police budgets, like God, some areas have what almost in the billions in police budgets. My small city is at 52 million, and I'm kind of reading this summary, and I'm going, wait, you don't think you're trusting the police department to help lower recidivism rates? I read that and went, what? Like, you don't think the community could help with that?
Mm-hmm.
That's just, it's funny, but it's ridiculous. Like, it's what do you need all this money for? Where's this really going?
Honestly, I think it's going to militarize the police, to give them more gear. I mean, we haven't even seen all of the police equipment yet. I've seen some of the equipment that they're making for police. We haven't even seen it all yet.
I
So
know,
that's the
I know,
scary part.
I know Jimmy did a story about like robot dogs or something like that way back.
Oh yes. Yes.
I'm like,
So
what the fuck?
well, absolutely. I used to work at MIT and there's robot cheetahs. There's all of that type of technology that a lot of people I would say have not seen in the field just yet. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Some of it does exist. They just haven't put it out in the field for people to see yet.
This money could be going to so much other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We,
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks so much, Eric. I want to go ahead to the next caller, but thanks so much for calling in.
appreciate it, Sabby.
Alrighty. Next caller is Greg Bruce. All right, Greg, you are on the mic.
This is not Greg. This is Sam Seder. Can you hear me?
What?
This is Sam Seder. As you know, one of my peons found one of your videos in which you criticized my celebration of the first black female Supreme Court justice. And I had to give you a Sam-splaining on Twitter. The thing
You're
is,
fucking with me. Quit messing with me.
I'm not messing with you. I'm Sam-splaining.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Now, this Supreme Court nominee may have sided with Lockheed Martin against working people, but you know my opinion of working people. I don't care. And Jimmy Dore is bad. Also, as far as Ro Khanna, he's a fellow liberal, and I would never go against any Democrat because that would hurt MSNBC's feelings. And I don't want to do that because of my crush on Rachel Maddow. And don't tell Emma that I said that, because then she'll stop calling me sugar daddy.
What is happening?
I must get going because I'm exhausted from speaking at 10 times my normal speed. But I just wanted to say, Jimmy Dore's bad, and I don't care.
Oh my God. Oh God. For those of you who may be a little bit confused, yeah, so you guys know if you follow me on Twitter, I clip my videos. I'll take like a little 2-minute clip and I'll put it up on Twitter. I took a 2-minute clip from the stream that I had where it was Sam Seder versus Bill Maher, whatever. Well, apparently it came to my attention last night when I was on my way to bed. That's how late it was. Sam Seder responded to that clip and tried to give me like a lecture, basically. I'm a grown ass woman. Tried to give me a lecture. He's basically mansplaining to me. It was ridiculous. And I was like, no, dude, you're wrong. You're wrong about this. And then he came back and responded again. You have to keep in mind what time it was. I think I went to bed at like maybe just about 1 o'clock in the morning. He came back and replied to that again. Keep in mind, I've never met him. I don't know him. So this is a little strange. And so I finally told him to go to bed. And so apparently, like, that thread just kept going today and today. And eventually, I didn't even read all of it anymore. Like, that's how many people replied. And oh my God, it was so, it's cringe. A lot of people, it's so funny when people attack me on Twitter because I don't read half of that shit. But that was funny. That was funny. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the next caller. Edward. You're on the mic, Edward. Oh, I lost Edward. I don't know what happened. Okay, Mason, you are on the mic. So you'll need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Okay, so what I wanted to bring up is I know you guys were talking about city councils and stuff recently, and that's something that like I really strongly believe in is like we can have a national campaign, whatever, but like what happened to Bernie after he lost? Like it fizzled out and they could barely get the support back by 2020, and we saw what happened in the 2020 primary. So like I guess I feel like it's just my personal opinion, but we should be trying to break in on these state and local levels just because I feel like that's a little bit more realistic. And a lot of people say, well, it's way more corrupt at the local level and stuff, but it's also a lot easier to like go around. Like if you're trying to campaign in a state house district, that's very different than campaigning for Senate on a statewide level. Like you have a lot less people that you need to convince.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
And
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I guess like right now, my area, my county went to Bernie. I live in Michigan, and my county went to Bernie, and I'm pretty sure that the margin of the primary would have like if my county went to Hillary, it probably would have swung the state. So it's really bizarre to me to see the people in my county that are in power be so anti-left wing. All the Democrats that are in charge, even though my county went to Trump twice, Bernie Sanders county. And like the people that are here and in charge of the Democratic Party here have been around for so long. The lady who's running for state senate in this newly drawn district actually favors Democrats for once. Her husband was the drain commissioner, and before that he was the road commissioner. So like, and they've all been here for like decades and decades. And like so few people want to vote, so few people want to try, and it's just really disheartening. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to do it right away, but in 2024 I'm going to run for school board. I'll be 18 years old right at the cutoff. That's what I'm going to do, because like we can't just keep waiting for something to happen. We have to do it ourselves.
That's a good point. And I'm glad you brought up school board as well, because that's another position I feel like people don't pay as much attention to. But it's just as important as the other like local positions. And you said like your county went to Bernie Sanders in Michigan. What county are you? Are you in Detroit area or?
I'm in Bay County. I live okay, so it's like north of Saginaw. I don't know if you know where Saginaw is, but it's north of Flint and Saginaw, and it's like always been a Democratic county. It went to Obama 2 times and then ended up going to Trump twice because people just didn't feel like getting out to vote. So I don't know. It's a really like a union area, like white working class city. It's like 80% white, but it was like historically Democrat. So like it was always kind of like a union area, and it's
Mhm.
shifted away from that. And like as like the like Trump came, they kind of shifted towards like the right wing, and it just like was a really weird shift that happened. And then like our Democratic Party in our area has flopped so hard after Trump has like showed up. Like we had a state rep who he went from winning by like 7 points in a Trump year while Trump was on the ballot to a few years later having a Republican come in and actually campaign on real substantial issues and win the race because like the Democratic Party was just kind of like business as usual, Trump this, Trump that, we're going to win. And it just like didn't click because people just didn't feel like getting out and voting for those people, and it's the same people that have been there forever.
Mhm. And this is what happens when, because sometimes people forget the Democratic Party used to be the party of the working class, and we haven't seen that in a while. I mean, I haven't seen that since Obama was elected. I mean, to be honest with you, it became like the party of like Wall Street. But yeah, you're right. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people just became discouraged. Like Obama won. People who voted for Obama like twice in a row. This is the thing we used to tell people too. We really need to talk to the people who were the two-time Obama voters that then turned around and voted for Trump. And so when I hear
Mm-hmm.
people say to me that, oh, well, Trump supporters are all racist, I'm like, really? Have you met all of them? All of them are
Mm-hmm.
that way? Really? What about the ones who voted
Yeah.
for Trump that also voted for Obama?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's really like weird, and my area is like so like that, so like those Obama to Trump voters. It was like one of those pivot counties and stuff. But it's just like it baffles me how like Democrats don't change their strategy. They just keep running the same thing over and over again when they know that a progressive would outperform them. Like the guy that ran for House, he was like bashing DSA on Twitter, and I literally, I was like, "You were an incumbent. You won twice in a row. You were running for re-election, and you got smacked because you did the same thing every single time." And it's just bizarre that they're like, oh yeah, this will work, we've done this forever, it works, but like they know that would have done better than Hillary did. So I just don't understand what like this weird loop of like, let's just keep running the same thing and eventually it will change. Like it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good point. Even like musicians on tour don't fall for that trick. And I can give you guys a couple examples. Prince. I saw Prince in concert about 10 years ago. My friend also saw him in concert, but we didn't go to the same show. After we compared notes, we realized he didn't do the same show that he did in my city, in her city. They switch up the songs, they switch up the order, they have a different opening, a different closing. They don't always have the same people, the same opening acts as well. So it wasn't exactly the same, but that's good because people don't want to see the same thing over and over and over. You have to switch it up a little bit. But you're right. I think the Democratic Party just follows the same playbook. And honestly, I think they like to lose.
Hmm. I think that like one of the most important things that's often overlooked is we don't try to get those voters who didn't vote in 2016, the
Yeah.
50% of people in the country that didn't vote. And that's crazy because like they're like, oh, those people don't vote anyway, it doesn't matter. Well,
Yep.
they can vote. Like if you if you talk to them, maybe they'll vote for you. But they just like they see it as a lost cause, and they're like, okay, we gotta focus on the liberals. We know we got them, and then we gotta win some moderates, and that's like their whole strategy over and over and over again. When like if you get those 50% of people, even if you get half of the 50%, if you get 25% plus the people that are there hardcore, then you can win. And and it's like it's so outlandish to them to think that Bernie Sanders would have won because oh my gosh, he's a socialist. Like it's like, well, it isn't just like you have to swing the voters that vote. There's turnout. Turnout is a huge issue that's always overlooked for some reason. Like if you can increase turnout, it doesn't matter what the people who vote normally, what they do. Because you have
Exactly.
people who don't normally vote. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's crazy to me that it's like insanity, because they do the same thing over and over again and they expect different results.
Well said, Mason. I'm gonna go ahead to the next caller, but thanks so much for calling in.
Thank you.
All right, Colin, we're gonna try this again. You are now the next caller.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yay!
Yay! Yeah, I figured it out. I had my buds connected and I had them out of my ears, so that's why you can hear me initially.
Oh, you
So,
pulled a Sabby.
but yeah, real quick, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but regarding Ro Khanna, I'm just kind of like, when I heard it, I'm just kind of was just like, who cares? Honestly,
Mhm.
because you could put anyone in the squad, or actually anyone in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, in that same position as Ro Khanna is right now, allegedly, and I wouldn't feel a ways for any single one of them at this point, because they haven't really done anything, I think, to really convince us that, like, they're up for working for the people. But funny enough, like, it's funny because I was thinking around forced to vote, um, when the whole drama regarding, like, are they going to vote for Nancy Pelosi or not, or like the Kevin McCarthy, thing, like, if enough Democrats didn't vote for her. I actually thought about the idea. Like, granted, we know that Ro Khanna is crap, but I thought about the idea of, like, as a squad, they couldn't put them, or at least a congressional caucus, congressional Progressive Caucus, couldn't put Ro Khanna up as a possible candidate for Speaker of the House. I mean, if they wanted to give a little bit more of, I think, of a push for Nancy Pelosi in order to, as leverage. So I actually remember thinking that, like, at that time. But yeah, Ro Khanna is garbage. So it's just, but I think it's just kind of, at this point, you can put in anyone, any member within the Progressive Caucus, and personally, I would feel the same about any one of them. So I think this is a way for, um, for Bernie to kind of say, hey, to, like, here's a quote unquote progressive candidate, but also filling in the identity politics that the Democrats love. He's, a person of color, and, obviously he's Indian. So, that will kind of be a big draw, I think, as far as the media. So I just think it's just kind of very telling that, like, the he's kind of pushing Ro Khanna, or seemingly at this point, but I think it's just kind of fitting what other people said before in terms of, like, he's pretty much in with the Democratic Party in the sense that he acts progressive enough, but he really is down for capitalism. He's very similar to Warren in a lot of ways, actually. So, um, so yeah, I'm just kind of like, I don't really care, and he's not going to do well. So,
No.
so yeah, so it's just kind of like, this is an utter waste of time. So I don't see
Yep.
why Bernie would even bother. Um, but I think it's just, his way to kind of push the progressive thing, the grift going at this point. But you don't have really any valid candidates, at least
Right.
right now, with what we have. So yeah.
Right. No, that's a good point. I mean, I don't think I mean, none of the people that they've mentioned I could see winning. None of
Right.
them. Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, uh they brought up Hillary Clinton again and I'm like, "What?" Like, so I don't know. Like, this is well, first of all, do you think Joe Biden will run again?
Ah, I've gone back and forth, and I think my mind changes, I think, by the week, honestly. I think a lot of it depends on like how his health, his mental state gets within the next year or so. I think we'll have a better idea, probably around this time next year. But as of right now, I am tempted to say yes. I think, especially given, what's going on in Ukraine right now. I think, if anything, it might give him a little bit of a boost, slightly, I mean, among the liberals, to kind of justify the idea of, hey, you can't get rid of me right now. We're in the middle of a war. So,
Right.
So for that, I think, as of right now, yes. But I think a lot of it also depends on if his brain turns to mush within the next year. I think only time will tell. I think as of this point, yeah, I think he will definitely run again. So, um, but yeah, I think it's just, I think, again, going back to Bernie for a second, I just think like it's kind of his way of just kind of throwing us a bone, just kind of saying, here, like, here's a quote unquote progressive candidate that in his mind that we can kind of try and get behind. But I think, obviously we all know better. And, like, I just feel it's kind of an insult in the sense that they're allegedly putting him up, knowing, I think, especially like given how many times he's been on Jimmy Dore's show and just how much doublespeak that he makes, just as far as, what he says, and then just, but his actions don't necessarily reflect that. So, um, yeah, I just feel like
Mhm.
shame on Bernie, for even putting him up as an option. I would have, just done your time in the Senate and just kind of rest in peace, honestly.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree. Well, Colin, thanks so much. Colin, thanks so much for calling in.
Thank you, Sabby. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, and I'm going to take our next caller, which is Edward. Let's see what
Yes,
happened.
yes, I accidentally hit the hang up button last time. Let me just say, I saw you last night. I've been following you for a while, and I really enjoy what you do. And when you told me that you were going to talk about possibly Ro Khanna running for U.S. president, that same night I watched Jimmy Dore, and he had someone from the gray zone questioning Ro Khanna about gas prices and about whether he supports sanctions against Russia, which would increase gas prices. And of course, he says he's for sanctioning Russia, not buying Russian gas, but he's still for reducing gas prices. And you just sort of know, I don't know about you, but I just sort of know when a politician is lying to me. And I can tell, he's full of it. I mean, uh, gas prices are a market function. I mean, you could artificially lower gas prices, I guess, but then you would have shortages of gas. So, as far as I'm concerned, he's just full of it, and I don't take him seriously at all. And no doubt he probably voted for the aid package that's going to Ukraine instead of acknowledging the fact that the war in Ukraine is probably just as much the fault of the United States as it is Russia, because we insist on making Ukraine part of our orbit, and it's obvious, you know, because Ukraine shares such a large border with Russia, why that would be a threat to Russia. Ukraine has always been a traditional invasion route to Russia, and Russia can't afford to have NATO troops on its border, and it's not going to have NATO troops on its border. So So basically, he's in bed completely with the military-industrial complex. He's total crap as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't even consider him. Now I don't know what you think about this, but the one person, she used to be a politician. She's not in Congress now, but I actually uh, tend to believe most of what she says, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. And if Tulsi Gabbard were to somehow miraculously win the Democratic nomination, I could see going with her. I would prefer she run as an independent, but if she chooses not to do that, I'm okay with going with the Green Party or even going with the Libertarian Party if I have to, because I don't want to vote for crooks anymore for president. I'm
Mm.
just done with it. I don't care for that anymore, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. And I pretty much assume that mostly anyone who's a Democrat or Republican is probably a crook at this point. And you know,
Mhm.
the last time I voted Democrat was in 1988, and that was just after I moved to the Boston, Massachusetts area from Florida. I
Whoop,
spent
whoop.
almost 32 years of my life in the area where you're sitting right now. I'm very familiar with the Boston area. Last lived in Saugus, but I'm calling you now from Brattleboro, Vermont, where the rent prices aren't so crazy. So I can actually afford the rent out here in Brattleboro. So anyway, that's pretty. I guess I would only ask you what do you think about Tulsi Gabbard?
I'm actually trying to see if I can get Tulsi Gabbard to come on. She's very busy, so I'm crossing my fingers here. I definitely like her take on no regime change wars. I definitely agree with her on that. I felt like that was one of her stronger moments of her campaign. I definitely like the fact that a lot of people don't know this, but Tulsi Gabbard also had a reparations plan when she ran for president in 2020. She also had a Medicare for all bill, but her bill was a little bit different from Bernie Sanders. She didn't really get a chance to really talk about all that because they cut her mic. A lot of the times, like during the Democratic primary debates, they didn't really want to let her talk, especially after she like chewed out Kamala Harris. Let's just be real. But yeah, like I was a really big Bernie supporter. Some of the things that Tosi has said recently strike me to be a bit odd, a bit out of character for her. But that's also one of the reasons why I do want to interview her. I do like the fact that the big one is I do like the fact that she's against like the regime change wars. She served in the military. My dad served in the military. So it would be nice to talk to her to get her perspective on things. And I am curious, like why she's, she's pretty much in my mind, based on what I've seen. I think she's pretty much left the Democratic Party. I think if she were to run, she should run as an independent or a third party candidate. Um, so yeah, I'm iffy on Tulsi. I think she has some good takes. I think she has some bad takes. But that's where I stand with her right now.
Just a bit of mild criticism. I hope you won't take this the wrong way. I saw your interview with Nick Brana, and basically, I don't take the sexual allegations against him very seriously. I've seen this movie too often, and it's getting boring. But what I wish you had concentrated more on than the sexual allegations was the apparent mismanagement of the People's Party. I was expecting to see a People's Party National Founding Convention by now. I was expecting to see hopefully at least a dozen candidates running in strategic districts by now, and he's just not making the progress he needs to make. I mean, I was sending a 10-month contrib- dollar a month contribution to the People's Party, and I quit it because I'm just seeing total incompetence by the leadership. I mean, I support the ideals of the People's Party, but I don't see the leadership getting the party anywhere. And right now, I'm preferring the Green Party
Mm.
as a source for my vote. Again, I'm not touching the Democrats or Republicans. That's not even an issue. But I just wish you'd talk more about the apparent mismanagement that of the party that I think Nick Brand is possibly guilty of, as opposed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for that. I have invited him back on to discuss new video evidence that has surfaced um recently on Twitter. So hopefully he will be able to come back on and discuss um more in detail what happened with the volunteers, especially now that we have that video evidence. But yeah, no, I hear where you're coming from. I think that there's a lot of questions out there and there's a lot that people want, answered. And I think that the more information that he provides, I think the better that will be for the viewers because people really want to know like what happened here, like what went wrong. Um, and I, for one, unfortunately, I was one of those people where I wasn't at the MPP convention. I wasn't there early on like some of the other people who were involved. So there are some things that I missed as well. But yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate that criticism.
Well, thank you, and I do love the work that you're doing, and I intend to keep on being a viewer and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for calling
You
in.
know.
Hopefully they'll figure out all these bugs, man. Cause like I had to leave and come back. Okay, I see them now. Thanks so much for letting me know, Eric. All right, this is to a different Eric. You are the next caller.
Hey, Sabby.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for taking my call. I joined a little bit late, so I apologize. I didn't get a chance to hear everything, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about Ro Khanna and the Green Party reps that were in CJ's earlier summit meeting. But first, with Ro Khanna, he definitely has, uh, at the beginning of his career, to most of us, he would have seen, to me, 2 years ago, I would have got behind him really strongly behind him because it seemed like a person that we could get behind. But then as time has gone on, especially even with this latest revealing of himself with Max Blumenthal,
Mm-hmm.
you can't help but say the guy completely is a fraud. And we have to stand behind that interview and we have to continue to use that as a way to show what he is. And we shouldn't let up on that because in doing what he did, he completely revealed what he's going to do if he gets more power, which is more of the same. So we cannot let him pass on that at all. Anything that he does from here on out, he's going to have to prove it back to us with actions and not words. Meaning that if someone like him wants to win back us, people like, that are watching your show, he cannot win us with just words. He has to win us with actions and policies that he actually gets through for us. Otherwise, we should not give him a pass at all, if that makes sense. Uh, and then, second, as far as the Green Party, the summit guys that were there today, I didn't know one of this lady that was on the show, she indicated that they had won 100 seats. I don't know what type of seats, I guess countrywide, but I was sad to hear that we were only finding out about this today. And I think even CJ indicated that he didn't know either. So it just goes to show us that if the Green Party's been doing something good, we don't know anything about that, at all. And I actually went on their website today for both the California Green Party and the Washington State. and they had nothing about the summit. So I just don't think they're doing a good job strategically to market themselves, to position themselves, to promote, the party, the brand, so to speak, so that more people, regular everyday folk,
Well, can I ask you a question really
at
quick,
the shows that
Eric?
we're into. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Um, why? Why do you think? Because I've had that question for quite some time. I've mentioned it to people that have come on here that have ran like third party, campaigns before. Um, why are they not marketing themselves? Because that's the frustrating part to me. Why are they not getting their names out there? Do you think this is just a financial issue, or do you feel that they just this is the way that they've always done it and this is what they know?
Well, I can answer it to you this way. Just being, I hear a lot of people sometimes when they get on these talks and they want to sound very smart. And the older that I'm getting, Savvy, the more that I realize that in order to really make your point, you have to make it simple so that the people listening can understand it without, too big words or just too fancy or just making yourself look big. I think the Green Party is not connected with us, the people that are actually energetic about doing something. Because I saw it today. They were talking to CJ and they were glad to talk to him, but they're not in our ecosystem. They somehow have missed becoming part of what's going on today with the left. And, I don't know if that could be just something that they have missed just by not acknowledging that we're here and we are not connecting with them. But somehow their leadership has to reach out to us, the people that are, like RBN and other shows that are actually really energizing the ecosystem of the left so that they can become a part of it. Because if they did, we could support them and they can support us, right? And then together, our message, our voices become stronger. Right now, we're not together with them. Even though we talk about them, they're not with us. I mean, I'm not saying they're against us, but they're just not part of what we're doing in this ecosystem that we're sort of creating over the last, maybe 18 to 2 years. It's really not that long. And so it's there for the taking. Like I've told you before, a lot of this is here for the taking, but obviously it's very, I guess, very delicate what we have right now, meaning that somebody could come in and scoop up our energy if they had the right message, which RBN has, and with the right people promoting it. So it's here for the taking. It's just we're kind of missing that opportunity, if that makes sense.
Okay, here's what I think is the problem. I think the reason why they may not be with us is because if you look at the past, let's go back to like the Bernie campaigns and all that fun stuff. I think the reason why they're not with us is because they have really not been their campaigns have not been included in the left space. And what I mean by that is obviously, mainstream media tries to smear like progressive candidates and left candidates as they're always going to do. They do the same thing to Green Party candidates. But what I notice is that even in left independent media, those candidates, those third party candidates, were not brought onto those platforms. That is so odd to me. Like now I
Yeah.
think back on it, and I don't know why I didn't really pick up on this
Mm-hmm.
before, but why is it that people like Howie Hawkins, Jill Stein, and those are just on the federal level. But I'm talking about even some of the ones that ran for like Congress, that ran for Senate. Why were they not brought on to those left independent media shows? Why were their campaigns not presented? Why were they not even mentioned? So I think that the fact that both sides are pretty much shunned or smeared by mainstream media, if anything, left independent media should have taken them in. Because if you look at the platform that the Green Party had for 2020, the Green Party had more of a progressive platform than some of the progressive candidates that ran for office.
Yes.
So it's just
Yes.
that is such a good point. It's just like they're not giving that attention, they're not giving that space, and that's disappointing. Hopefully that will change, you know?
I think you're 100% right. I think maybe we need to be self-aware of us, the independent channels and the listeners, that maybe we should have been asking for that to be a part of our what was happening a couple of years ago, to include them into this. I think some of it could be that the legacy that the Green Party has as a non-winner, if that makes sense, that they sort of, their moniker is not equated with winning, and so while they're there as a third party, you don't. I don't want to say you, but in general, people don't see them as a winning option, if that makes sense. And maybe in the fact that many of the newer channels, uh, they're very energetic, very dynamic. The Green Party, while it had, as you stated, the platform that really would have fitted into what we're trying to do, the Green
Mm-hmm.
Party itself was not seen as a winning option. And these were really new channels, all of them, except for a few, Jimmy and maybe a few others that were a little bit older. And so there's some of that too, right? Because we're sort of growing and there's a learning curve. I mean, that's the other thing. Many of the channels today are going through a learning curve, all the
Right.
while, fighting YouTube. So it's a lot of things sort of pulling at this. And there's no centralized place where we can go other than YouTube as a platform. But, even Jordan from Status Coop, who I don't agree with many times, although I respect them, but I don't agree with them a lot sometimes, just on some of his takes. He has had that idea that you share, that if all the channels had a place where we could go to, where they were collectively, working together, and it was
Mm-hmm.
more unified, maybe even that, because, at work, for instance, like if you work in a company and you have various departments, just by the mere fact that you interface with them a little bit, there's synergy that's created by those instances where you're working with them closely with them, and you also gain other things, right? So if all these channels were in one place sort of working together, they would be much stronger. We don't have that. In some ways we're sort of missing that unity among the channels. Not that they're all going to say the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, but unity in the sense that, and maybe unity is the wrong term. I'm not sure what term we want to give it, but that would give us, and that would give a flagship for people to say, hey, that's, we could go over there. We can go and listen to this network or this group of people. We currently don't have that, and so the way that we end up, listening to Sabby is either through someone else. Maybe we see you in someone else's channel, and then we kind of stumble, well, not stumble, but we find about you or others that way. So there's a lot of things that are there that are not completely ironed out, I guess you could say. But in order to make them structure, you have to really think of these things strategically, and to be strategic, it takes planning, it takes experience too, and so, and that happens in the background. That's the kind of work that happens in the background that people would have to do, really think it through. They don't have to be in front of the camera. When you're a strategic planner, you have to work behind the scenes and sort of command and drive where the ship is sort of going. And I'm not sure that we have that really. And so, but we need that, because the other side has it. The people that are making those decisions, that make the mainstream media the way it is, and that keeps the message unified. Those are people behind the background that are strategically, pulling the gears and saying, "Don't talk about this. Talk about this." Those people we never see, but I can assure you, they're there behind the backgrounds, making a lot of money. And I'm not saying that we would have to have the people here on our side making a lot of money, but we would have to have people strategically thinking about this, because that's part of a winning team. You have people in the front like Rome. I love Rome because he's out there, he's doing direct action, and he almost reminds me of Tupac sometimes. uh,
Yes.
right, right. And I love him for that, But I can recognize I can never be Rome. That's not me. I could play another role. Well, we need other people behind the background, behind what Rome is doing, to be strategic, to push him forward, but to support him. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where I think we need more of this strategic planning behind us. So
I hear you, man. Well said. Well said. Sorry, I just got another text thing going on. I hear you.
But thank
I totally hear where you're coming from, and I think you're right. Like, you know what? You know where people work together that I've noticed. If you notice all the people in on the right with independent media, they
yes,
work together.
yes, yes, they do.
You notice that?
They fall in line with the same message.
Yep.
They literally follow the same talking points, and they will not falter. Like if once they know they have to talk to a point, they stick to it, and they just keep pounding on it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to kind of do some of that too.
I hear you. I hear you.
but,
Eric, thanks
but
so
thank
much
you,
for
Savvy.
calling
Thank
in.
thank you
There's
so
a
much.
lot
Thank
of
you. Have a good one.
you too. I just want to say there's a lot of Erics tonight, just like last time. So I want to take the next caller, which is Anthony. Anthony.
Hey, how's it going? Sorry about the troubles. Yeah, this app is it's pretty buggy, but hey, at least they got it off just iPhone, so that's a plus. And kind of like the Rockfin app that was pretty buggy for a while too, but they're working it out. It's just good to have alternatives. How's it going, Sabby?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm so good. Oh gosh, it's such an honor to talk to you on this show on this evening. And there's so many good shows going on right now that Door and Revolutionary Blackout and everything that you want to watch, and there's just not enough time. But so it's an honor. And I know you were talking about Ro Khanna today, right? And I don't know why they floated that story that he's running for president because. This kind of segues into 2 points I want to make, but he appears on the freaking Tom Hartman show like once a month or something, and takes calls for an hour. And so he spoke on that show today. And I'm not running for president unequivocally, and I wish Bernie would run again. That's what he
What?
wishes Bernie would run again. And I'm like, bro, that's crazy. Dude's so old. But he said he will endorse Joe Biden if he runs too. So
What?
it's a joke. You can't even take it serious. Yeah, he said all that. Yeah, he
Oh
will
my
endorse
God.
Joe. He wishes Bernie would run, but he is not, apparently, allegedly.
This guy's a joke, man. This is such a joke.
Oh,
Oh
big
my
time.
God.
And yeah, he's the worst. And I called into the program, and I love these programs. Like I mean, I hate the Tom Hartman. It's like it's counter productive, counter revolutionary, counter everything. And but all the congressmen like Mark Pocan and Ro Khanna, they go on it all the time. And if you finesse your way into the call queue, you can ask them a question and kind of get them in the gotcha moment. And yeah, I even do that with my local NPR radio show here. I hate it. It's neoliberal. They're propagandists, but they have all the right players on, so I call in all the time and just pitch them a tough question. But so I asked Ro Khanna today about the Azov, basically the whole Ukraine situation. I said, hey, you signed a letter in 2019 saying they should be a terrorist organization. How come it doesn't concern you that they're officially a part of the Ukraine government? And Ro Khanna's like, yeah, well, we can't send weapons to them, but uh, it's a big context. There's a bigger picture, and it's a messy situation, and because Ukraine's in the fight for its survival. So basically, like to me, that's just seven ways of saying we got to work with Nazis because Putin's bad. I'm like, I wish, I don't know, it's insane. So that he's lost his mind on the Ukraine situation, kind of. I think he's lost his credibility too. But
I agree. So you saw the interview with him and Max Blumenthal?
oh my God, yeah, just his body language and the way he was walking. Like Jimmy said, if you were answering the question, you'd stop and talk to him. You didn't even talk to him.
I don't even know how
Yeah.
I don't know how Max continued to do that because like when we did broadcast journalism in college, First of all, the equipment is maybe it's gotten better nowadays, but the equipment was pretty heavy. So it's like you're trying to like walk fast and catch up to that person at the same time talking in the mic, then passing the mic to them so you can pick up their sound as well. And somewhere behind you or near you is a cameraman, and the camera is really heavy. So I don't know how I don't know how he did it, because like Ro Khanna was just like he was power walking through. Like, oh man.
I was wondering about who his cameraman was too, because then when I saw he interviewed Massey, it looked like, I don't know, he must have had a tripod, or one of his friends were with him, or he had a big selfie stick or something, because it didn't look like he was holding the camera with the Massey interview, which I thought happened on the same, time frame. But yeah, I love that. The way, I think they call that bird dogging, right? You kind of like pursue these politicians really. You stick to them and like you give them the worst, toughest questions and like just throw it in their face. And I love that. I actually kind of do it too. With, like I said, with all the congressmen, senators, if they ever have an event here at like a union hall and stuff, or a town hall, and I always go and just try to like, I'll sit in the back real quiet the whole time and listen to them, and they're talking about boring stuff and Build Back Better, and it's insane. And then at the end, I'll ask a question, or I'll go up to them and uh, I've gotten to yell at my senators, say, "Hey, you don't support Medicare for all. It's in the state Democratic Party platform. Why don't you support it?" And I got to yell at her. So, it's just kind of that's kind of activism I'm into. And like I said, calling the shows and giving them real tough questions, and that actually makes me think of this whole question about electoralism, actually. And I know there's a huge debate, and I'm of the opinion that different elections call for different strategies. And for example, like a general election, of course, we either want to vote for the third party, or honestly delegitimize it by not participating. That's pretty much, what we would want for that. But let's say we have a statewide, I have a governor's race coming up in my state this year, and it's an incumbent. So she's going to win. She's not running against anyone. She's a shoo-in. But I'll still vote in the Democratic primary. I'll write in Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, whatever, just to, detract from the incumbent's percentage. And that's in that election, that strategy. And, there's another strategy, another election. So my opinion on electoralism is, yeah, it's pretty much a dead end. It's rigged beyond, saving. But I still like to be really hyper informed and know every congressperson and every bill and every candidate, and at least in my locality. And that's the best way we can decentralize it. If we're all aware of everything in our state, in our city, then we can kind of share the information amongst each other, and we'll pretty much know all the lies that these Congress people are telling. We'll say, "Oh, I heard him say this on this radio show, but then I saw him at a town hall and he said." Yeah. So even if we're not into electoralism, I think we should be into it just to be aware. Yeah.
Well said. That's a good point. Thanks so much for calling in, Anthony.
You got it.
All right. I'm going to read this really quick, and then I'm going to go to the next caller, because this is about the right to repair. This is what I was trying to tell you guys about. The Right to Repair initiative in Massachusetts made it so that auto repair shops can access the source code. That's what it was for the diagnostic systems in cars, so that auto manufacturers couldn't keep it proprietary. Yes, that's so important. Thank you so much for that, Greg Bruce. Thank you for explaining that. That's why I'm saying, I was like, I don't know the details, man. I don't know, but I just knew it was a big deal. All right, I'm going to take the next caller, which is Donald.
Hello, old friend. How you doing, Seth? Thank you for taking my call.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Yeah, Louis Rossman is one of my YouTube heroes. He's the one that's been fighting for right to repair, going to various states to lobby for it. And he went to Congress in D.C. He's, like you, one of my YouTube heroes, and he's great. But back to what you were talking about, I love Max's characterization. He calls him Ro Khanna. And I think his resume says U.S. congressman and professional weather vane. Pretty sure that's what it says. But if I could, I make a comment about about third parties, because we were talking about the third party summit and all that.
Mhm.
When you think if that on topic, so the Whig Party became extinct about the same exact time that the Republican Party came into existence. Now, the Republican Party wasn't worried about the Whig Party; they were going to exist no matter what. But you could kind of call the abolitionists, which at the time everything's kind of flip flop, but the Republican Party, they were essentially going to be a third party. If the Whig
Yep.
Party didn't disband, they would have been a third party. And you could look at Andrew Jackson as kind of like a early version of Trump, or Trump's a later version of Jackson in a way, because he was about populism and he was ruthlessly horrible with the Indians and all that. But he did, in fact, engage the unwashed masses in the coalition. So in a way, the Democratic Party, I mean, let's face it, the Democratic Republicans were a pretty elitist party, Jefferson and the rest of them. So in a way, the Democratic Party itself would have been a third party. So this idea that, a third party can never succeed. There's two examples that our two major parties essentially started out as would-be third parties. And the other thing that people say, but they never win anything. Yeah, but if you look at the socialists and communists, I mean, they were getting millions of votes, in the late 20s and 30s before FDR took office. They had a huge impact. FDR was a centrist, but he did what he did because politically, I think he really wanted it. He felt that it was important, but he was doing it because he was forced to by third parties. Go back to the late 19th century, the Populist Party, the Follett, and the Progressive Party. All these third parties, if you take all of them away, we wouldn't have what we have today. So I just find it really, learn some history, folks. If you're a modern day person that says, and I'm talking about true progressives, Kyle Kalinske, a lot of people, man, but third parties, they never win anything. Third parties, including, like I said, you could argue the two major parties, all of the gains we've gotten in history, some of them we didn't maintain, but it was all done, vast majority of it, not within any of the major parties. It was all forced by third parties. So I'll leave it there and get your comment.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you said that, because I don't think a lot of people realize that. You really do have to go back and read the history of it, especially when we talk about parties in this country. And if I remember correctly, I have to double check this, but I believe Abraham Lincoln, I thought he was technically a third party candidate. I have to look that up.
Well, he probably must have been, because until he ran for president, the Whig Party still existed, but he ran for Senate first. I don't think he won. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, so it's like, I think the problem is, like, we continue to tell ourselves that third party candidates can't win, so we don't vote for them because we have that notion in our head, right? So we have to deprogram our minds. We have to
Yeah,
convince
and
ourselves
again,
that they can.
yeah, and we lose the fact that a party is not a party of one. That we look at Bernie, or we look at AOC. Yeah, she's the one. No, those people never get it. And believe me, go back to Marx, and go back to the people that form these third parties. Yeah, they like to have a leader that could be eloquent, like a W.B. Du Bois, who was the real deal leader, but they weren't going to get it done. It was
Yep.
the parties that got it done. It was the people going out into the streets and educating people and doing the stuff. It wasn't because one leader was great with oratory. You know, I mean,
Right.
it was the parties, and we lose that. We just think that, oh yeah, Bernie's the one. No, it's the party that put him there, and the party that's gonna, get it done. So I agree with you totally. It's not about, you know, individuals. It's the party. It's the masses. That's always been the case. And like I say, it's always been the third parties that have, whether, like you said, it's not third party candidates didn't win, but the parties and the force that they, maintained and diffused throughout the society is what got these changes done.
Mm. You're right. That's a good point. It's so frustrating to me when I see, like, other countries have like 4 and 5 and 6 parties, and people here are still so stuck on like the duopoly. Like, they don't think there's any other way, and they're like, "Oh, but you can only vote for 2 people on the ballot." And I'm like, "There's other people on our ballot too. Don't you see their names?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, but like no, like you really have to change your way of thinking, and you have to convince yourself that yes, I do have more options. No, I don't just have to vote for Democrat or Republican. No, I don't have to cheat. I don't have to choose between the lesser of two evils. And I think, hopefully going into 2024, hopefully we can get rid of that phrase, because I never really liked that phrase, the lesser of two evils. Like, what is that?
Yeah, it's like saying, well, we're going to drown in 5 years instead of 1 year because they're not going to flood the zone with more negative stuff for a few more years. So it's just delaying the inevitable. It's not like they're going to change anything, and they never have. If
Exactly.
I could throw in one more thing that, of course, the absolutely brilliant, Richard Wolff, no matter who it is, I have some disagreements with most folks, but Chris Hedges and Richard Wolff, it's really hard to find, not that I'm looking to, but they're just so spot on like 100% of the time. And here's what Richard Wolff said. He was talking about a left wing, like a socialist, like far left party in Europe. And he was talking, they were an MP, they were in the parliament. And they said, gee, you guys, you're hurting. These were, in other words, it was a right winger and a left winger talking. And the left winger said, you need not a right winger, but like a centrist, saying that, yeah, and we're trying to, it was a centrist. We're trying to do stuff, but you're making it hard because you're trying to drag it on. He said, no, you need us because we don't expect you to adopt our whole far left agenda. But by taking the things that you want, cherry picking it, if you will, then you have us as a foil to say, hey, let's do this so it won't go too far left. Or you.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. I think you cut out there for a second, Donald. I'm going to read this from Marcus really
Am I
quick.
back?
Yeah, you're back. Let me read
All
this
right.
really quick. What we've been thinking with Marcus Cage said FDR's policies were because capitalism would have collapsed. The moment forced him more. Oh, the moment forced him more than anything. Thanks so much for that, Marcus. Okay, go ahead, Donald.
Yeah, I know Betsy's waiting, so I'll just say, so if we had reasonable right wing parties, and I'm left of Bernie Sanders even at his best day, and maybe not quite as left as Richard Wolff, but pretty close. I'd make him my Treasury Secretary if I was president. But the idea that if you have right wing parties that are reasonable, not just for coalition purposes, but all the ideas are not left wing ideas. I happen to have my Second Amendment, sensibilities actually is formed by the yuppies. I have a sense of it's so far to the left it merges with the right. I believe in strong regulation, but freedom to bear arms, or something like eminent domain. The Hilo, it's a famous case, the Kilo case, where they said no, it doesn't have to be for highways. We could just say that your house is only one little house. We could take your footprint and we could build a skyscraper and get a lot more tax money. So now they say it's okay for capitalist purposes, just because of the tax money, to go with eminent domain. And it was 7-2 when we had a 5-4 balance. The two that voted against the eminent domain, expansion were, I think it was Alito and Thomas. It was two of the right wingers. So we need a legitimate right, conservative party, because maybe progressives don't always have the best, idea for how to move forward. So I'll leave it there.
Well said. Well said. Thanks so much for your call, Donald.
Thanks for listening to my jabbering.
All right. I'm going to go ahead to the next caller, which is Betsy, and Betsy will be my last caller. Just looking at the time here. All right, Betsy, you are up next.
Sabby, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Yay. Okay, I kept trying to unmute. I was sitting on mute a million times. And then I finally left the room. I hung up, left the room, came back in, and it seems to fix itself. Awesome. Anyway, how you doing, Sabs?
I'm doing good. I'm glad it's Friday.
Me too. It was a long work week. And I missed last week's show and Callin because I was out to dinner with a friend who I hadn't seen in since pre Omicron days. And so we just had a really nice long dinner, and it was really, really fun, relaxing. But it meant I missed your show and Callin, so I was kind of sad. Yeah, so I do not, I am not a fan of Ro Khanna running for president. I admit that I sort of had a little bit of a political crush on him when he was he like co-chair Bernie's campaign. I saw him at the victory rally in New Hampshire primary day and waved, and it was all super fun and everything. But yeah, I mean, let me ask you this: what has he done? What has he done to deserve the nomination? Setting aside for a moment that he is a member of the Democratic Party and and all that stands for, I would have far much more respect for him if he left the party. Even if he wound up doing what Bernie did and ran as a Democrat. It's so funny. I feel like I have to correct people all the time when they're like, "Oh, well, Bernie was a Democrat," and blah blah. I was like, "No, he ran for the Democratic nomination. He never actually became a Democrat, from my understanding, unless he did just for like a day and then left the party. I don't know, but where was Ro Khanna when we needed him to force the vote? What about when the vote was super close on funding? I forget how many millions of dollars for the Capitol Police. He didn't vote no. Right. I think that there's other people, and I used to think Nina Turner was one of them. I feel like I'm not as jazzed about her anymore, and she's still a member of the party. Like, it always comes back to that, and I totally got what you're saying before, Sabby, about people need to sort of like reprogram themselves to realize it's okay to vote third party or write in or whatever. But it's just really hard, because unless you need a critical mass of people doing it, right? If not enough people do it, then it won't ever happen. And we need things like ranked choice voting, obviously, right? And the other thing is, I was thinking what you were saying about how, like, in countries in other parts of the world, in like Europe, for example, there you'll have like 4, 5, 6 parties, 10 parties, 20 parties. The huge difference, though, is that they have proportional representation. When we don't have that. And I would love for us to have that, where maybe you're voting for like someone in your geographic district, but then you're also voting for, kind of like a slate, like maybe nationally, like we've got, say, a socialist slate or something. And then depending on how the vote goes, it would send X number of socialists to Congress for those seats. So it could be a mix of geographic and national, I don't know what you would call it, representation. But we don't have that. And the Democrats and the Republicans are never going to let that happen, because they want to be in power. So yeah, I am a big fat no on Ro. It's I like it. No on Ro. And it sounds like he probably, I think this could have been some trial balloon or something to boost his ego. I'm not really sure how serious he was or anybody else was about it. But like, here's this, like, can you imagine him running against Trump? I think if Trump runs and wins the nomination on the Republican side and Ro somehow won on the Democratic side, Trump would wipe the floor with him. And I say this as somebody who hates Trump. I grew up in New York. I've known about Trump shenanigans since I was a kid, because it was always plastered all over the newspaper, and everybody, in my family and friends, we all hated him. So I think it's sad but true that Biden might be, half asleep, might be the best chance for a Democrat to beat Trump. That's not to say that someone else couldn't do it. And I just think that we've got to go big and bold, because we are out of time. We're out of time on the climate change. We're out of time, healthcare costs. I mean, it's everything, right? It's like we have already passed the breaking point. People not being able to even having to make a choice now between, do I go to work for this little extra overtime, but it's actually going to cost me more in gas to get there, right? Like, and the cost of food. I mean, right? I'm okay. I work from home, so I have no commute, but I see it in the cost of food, going up and everything. And And I'm okay. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about, other people who are in these precarious situations, and seeing how the system has failed them again and again. And so, yeah, gotta go big and bold and like run someone who is a populist. Because I've given up. I've totally given up on the Democratic Party. It cannot be reformed from within. It can't be taken over. And I've soured on the People's Party. I'm so disgusted by the infighting and treating Nick Brana like he's some prophet or something. It's like it's really
Profit.
gross. People I thought people, and I saw him on your show, and I think you did such a great job, Sabby. Like and I was so glad that he didn't just like leave the interview like he did with what's his face, Jordan. I can't remember, but I'm talking about the one he had. I think it was the same day or maybe the day before. Jordan Sheridan, and he just like left because he was so mad that Jordan was calling him to task. So I just I don't even know. I think maybe it's like somebody who we haven't identified yet, like a person. But again, it can't, just like with Bernie, it can't be, I sounds cliche that, not me, us, but I have that sticker on my car for a good reason, because I really believe it. It can't be about one person. It has to be the movement. But so I think there's going to be someone who emerges, and I would do everything that I could to try to help that person. I just, we are challenged by the electoral system and how it operates. The winner takes all, and it with except for Maine and Nebraska, but it's it's kind of a joke. So that's kind of my thoughts. I mean, yeah, fine. If Ro wants to do it, like, fine. I think that it's laughable. And the other thing I almost forgot to mention was he, correct me if I'm wrong, he represents Silicon Valley. That's his district. Some of like the richest, most disgustingly rich people. And it's like that's the person who would represent. I mean, it's so gross. Like, it's almost funny. But I think that it's got to be somebody who comes from, and I'm not saying middle America, but somewhere that's much more in tune with the reality that most Americans face. Because you look at Silicon Valley, I'm sorry, that is not representative.
No, it's
at
not.
all of America. No. So those are that's my 2 cents about it. I maybe I sound like bitter or whatever. I mean, I am frustrated, and I try to do what I can at a super, hyper local level here in Massachusetts, and even within my little town of 10,000 people. And it's really tough, and I get burnt out, and like I have to take breaks from it, but like here in Massachusetts, I mean, like we're it looks like the party is coronating Maura Healey for governor. And it's like, oh my God, it makes me so ill. And I like Sonia Chang Diaz. She's still a Democrat though at the end of the day. But I still like, okay, I'm gonna support her. But do you know that, like, so I can't serve, and I'm kind of done with the People's Party. I cannot serve on the state central committee of the People's Party if I want to, say, collect signatures for someone like Sonia Chang Diaz. Which is, it's fine, it's their rule, whatever. But it's like, okay, I don't see any independents running. I don't think we have really much of a Green Party in the state. If there is an independent running for governor, then I'd be interested. I'd be curious. But right now, I don't see that, right? So I'm like, I'm going to support Sonia Chang Diaz. The thing is, at the presidential level, right, as you said, we have options. It's not like, gee, I gotta pick between, Ro Khanna and Trump, or whoever it is, or Biden and Trump, whatever. It's like we have these other options, and we have to make our voices heard. And that's why I haven't voted for Democrat for president since 2012. I wrote in Bernie in 2016, and I voted Green in 2020. And I know our vote doesn't matter in Massachusetts. So,
Right.
all these people who freaked out and told me it would be my fault if Trump won or whatever, like, they can kind of, kiss my ass. But yeah, it's I think it's important to do, even if it's symbolic and it doesn't change the outcome, to do a protest vote Like the guy before was, I don't know if he was one of the Erics or someone was saying before how like he votes in the primary and writes in like Mickey Mouse because he wants to keep the percentage lower for the winner. And I'm for that. I think writing in an actual person is probably preferable to Mickey Mouse. If there is somebody who would, consider it, and getting at least, even if that person got only like 1 or 2% of the vote, it's like something that will be recorded, and whereas they throw out Mickey Mouse. So yeah, I don't know. Like I'm feeling kind of queasy. When I heard the news about Ro Khanna, I was just like, my reaction was, "You've got to be kidding me! No way!"
Yeah, that got leaked somehow. That definitely got leaked somehow. He said either if Biden doesn't run again in 2024 or 2028, he might consider. But I do want to go ahead and get to the next caller because
yeah, sure.
I just have a little bit of a time crunch tonight.
So wait, quick question. So he never said if Biden doesn't run, but Kamala does. So he would does that mean that he would challenge Kamala? That would be really interesting.
He didn't say. That's a good question.
I'd almost love to see that. All right, cool. Good talking to you, Sabby.
You too.
I will tune in next week for sure.
Bye, Allison. I am making you the last and final caller. And I actually haven't figured out how to turn off. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Allison.
Sorry. No, you're fine. I tuned in late. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that it was almost over. I just wanted to so I've been organizing with the Green Party. I'm just going to show for them for a minute. Since 2015, I was actually attracted to the Green Party because it's an international party, and a really good Korean friend of mine is an active organizer in the Green Party, so I checked them out. I also was involved with the Democratic Party for a while here in Texas because, again, my vote doesn't matter. So I have a little bit more flexibility because of the winner-take-all system with being able to vote for third parties and look at third-party candidates. I think the biggest problem is people still keep donating to these, quote unquote, democratic institutions like the Democratic Party, to their slate of candidates, and to people who, say, DSA, People's Party, a lot of individual white men, who have a Twitter platform, and for some reason they get really famous. I don't really know why, when they're just spouting the same facts that other people have spouted, but that's here nor there. I just hope people going forward have a more open mind to what could possibly be in our community. Sometimes the run for president is a really, really big task. Even Congress and anyone who actually charts talking to power, it becomes dangerous, not just for yourself personally, but for your family, for your contacts, and for your future. So I really wish we would have more organized effort to pay organizers to do the work on the ground and to create learning opportunities and leadership councils and literally paying people to take time off work or quit their career to potentially be forever lost because of they're actually talking to power. So anyways, I think also on the local level, because a lot of city council and municipality type elections, and also statewide elections. So if you're not statewide, if you're say running for your local your state Congress and Senate, those are more low-key positions where usually you need less signatures and less votes to actually win as an independent, or you don't need to run on a party line at all. I think some of our leaders who might be able to move the third party movement are currently in positions, in city councils, either in small, medium, or large cities, or they're, doing trying to do work within the government already. I know a lot of people who have done military service are drawn to the cause, or people who are retired, because they don't have to worry about their next paycheck, or they don't they've already, that's a big thing when you don't have to worry about your next paycheck and you know you have food on the table and a house over your head and you can afford healthcare. You can actually dream big and like think about becoming a candidate. But for so many people, like that's not even a dream because like you're not even dreaming about next year for yourself personally, let alone for the, you know, the whole of the free world, blah, 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 blah. So again, lastly, I just wanted to mention that Chris Hedges always mentions this all the time, that so many of our leaders that are the leader that could be leaders now and could be leaders in the future, or political organizers, they are locked up in prison right now on petty charges or for some other bullshit or for a mistake when they did young or for real shit. Like sometimes, you know, people have reasons to do what they do and they get locked up and then their whole future is ruined. Like sometimes they can't even vote, they can't run for office. And even people who say that they are on the left will sometimes stigmatize people who have a criminal record. And I'm hopeful, but I'm also like really pessimistic because like I'm hopeful because we have all the answers, right? Like we know how to fucking organize. Like people know how to do this. Like we've just been continuously doing it for capitalism and for the Democratic Party and for people who show for the Democratic Party. And so that's my hope, I guess, going forward. And I think the work that all of us individually and with whoever has platform, even if that platform is your 10 friends, you know, who normally listen to your bullshit, like, you know, try to think bigger and like, I mean, Brianna Joy Gray does this, you know, great job. And I think you, Sabby, and a lot of people on the left have been starting to do this at a really good job. But having these like open-ended conversations done in good faith where we can actually like tuss apart the different like arguments of why we can't have nice things. And I think within those just like good faith, you know, discussions and like open-ended ideas where we can discuss different things, and not just from the point of like intellectuals who went and got a PhD and have been doing this for 20 years, you know, but from like normal people who work at the Amazon warehouse or who are a cook or like just do a nurse, people doing real talk who like typically don't have time. I think we should be listening more to their stories and seeing if they have like, you know, because they know what the working class wants more than anything else is people who are in the working class. So sorry, I rambled on way too long. But again, thank you so much for, you know, having these conversations, Sabby, and like for everyone, you know, everyone doing at RBN. Like I'm very thankful that y'all are actually having these kind of discussions in public so people can be inspired to have them at home. So that's it. Over. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well said, Allison. Thank you so much for calling in. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and shout out these super chats and then I'm going to end the segment because I just realized I'm past time. Thanks for the super chat, Andrew. The Batman in 4DX was mind blowing. I'm going tomorrow, Andrew. I'm super excited. I'm super pumped. Thanks for the super chat as well. I think Bernie did register as a Democrat in 2020, then left after the primary, though I'm not 100% sure. That's interesting. I have to double check that. I'm not sure as well. Guys, it's been a great night. I'm going to read this tip really quick. Thanks so much for the tip on Rockfin Roger Meadows. Screw these parties, Sab. We need to break the U.S. Senate and run a ballot initiative in 24 states to abolish all political parties at every level of government in those states. And then the U.S. Senate will be more reflective of the country where month-to-month Gallup poll counts Democrats and Republicans stay at 20% range and Indies at 40% something. Well said. Thank you so much for that. All right, guys, I got to head out. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I want to go ahead and end the segment on Callin. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.